We're learning the second Sikha on Parshas Vayera in Chelek on page 79. The shir today is being learned Lila Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rab Menashe Koltman. Chazal Zogin, our Chazal tell us, as B'schar she'omar Avram Avinu v'anoichi ofar ve'efer, as a reward for this that Avram said that I'm merely like dust and ashes, Zachu Bonov l'shtei mitzvahs, his descendants merited two mitzvahs, Efer Para, the mitzvah that is para duma, the red heifer, which is burnt into ashes, and then you mix water with it and sprinkle it on someone that is impure to purify him. So it's ashes. And va'afar saita, and the earth that's used in the case of a saita, which is a woman that was secluded with someone privately while she's married, and you have to then take a parsha in the Torah and place it into water, and it dissolves, and then she drinks it, and that will determine whether she had a relationship or not. So this is the earth, like Avram, that said Ofar Efer. So the Ofar is the dust, which is like the Ofar of the Saita. As is Yedua, it's well known as the Reibish the Gitzchar and Anayfim from Midah Keneged Midah, that when Hashem rewards, it's measure for measure. Is the full move on Eich Ben Idden done? So from this it's understood regarding this case as well, as the shaykhs from the zwei mitzvahs, Efer Para v'Afa Saita, the connection of these two mitzvahs, the ashes of the Para and the earth of the Saita, to Amiras Avram, to the expression that Avram said about himself, that V'anoichi Ofar ve'Efer, is nit nar mitzad dimyain from the Werter, Ofar ve'Efer. It's not only that the fact that there is a detail, the words of dust and ashes that are compared to the ashes of the para and the dust or the earth that's used by the Saita. Not weil die Teuchen von die zwei mitzvahs, but rather because the content of these two mitzvahs is ähnlich zum Teuchen von an Hagas Avram beifen von Vanechi Afa ve'Efer an Nava v'Shiflus betachlis. It's similar in nature to Avram when he expressed and said that I'm merely like dust and ashes, which is an absolute and ultimate level of humility. So davon verstehen, so the question here is, in was besteht die teuchendige Shaykhis benehem? What is the connection in what these two mitzvahs are about and what they represent to the expression of humility in Avram's words, V'anoichi ofar ve'efer? Chayre, it would seem, is adarabah. The opposite is true. There's no connection of these mitzvahs to what Avram Avinu said. The teichen pnimi from Para Duma is got an inyan hafchi from Avidas Shel Avram. If you look deeper into what the Para Duma represents, it's the opposite of what Avram, the way he served Hashem, expressed. Avidas Shel Avram is midas chesed. Avram's attribute is kindness, as it says, Avram oyevi, Avram my beloved. Yukidu as Avram is given anodiv b'mamayne b'gufay b'nafshe. Avram Avinu was generous with his money, with his body, with his soul. This to the point as Omra midas chesed, the attribute of kindness above said that Kol Yomai Chulu, all my life, every day I serve with kindness, but Avram Amad Shom B'Mkaimi. But now when Avram is doing everything with kindness in my place, that there's no need for me. Erat Machlef Geven Midas HaChesed. The greatness of Avram's chesed was to the extent that he was able to be in the place of the attribute of kindness above. Mashenkim Paraduma, by contrast, what is Paraduma all about is in Yana Gvura Betachlis. It represents the ultimate level of Gvura. Wie steht in Zayah, as the Zayah tells us, as Para de Kabilas Mismail, that the Para, the red heifer, it comes from the left side, which is Gvura. Ubefrat Apia Mavu and Kisvei Arizal, even more so, it says in the Arizal as Para, with the Hey at the end, B'toisvis Hey, sometimes it says Par, and here it says Para, is Merames of the Allah Hey Gvuris. It includes all aspects of Gvura that there can be. Und dazu is es Para Aduma. Additionally, it's a red heifer. Was euch der Mara Edoim is Merames of Gvuris. The color red is a representation of Gvuris as well. Und noch mehr, another detail about Gvuris here, sie darf sein Tmima bad Mimos. It has to be completely and fully red, which means Gvuris Petachlis, the ultimate and complete level of Gvuris. The Yisayrim is as Oster in Medrash. Furthermore, it says in the Medrash, as the Aleph Fir Tnoim Bepara, the four conditions that it says about the para, that in order for it to be fit to be used as the para aduma, has to be aduma, tmima, ashe'en bamum, ashalei ola alea oil, gain of the fir golias. These four conditions, these four details correspond to the four exiles, which is also a concept of gvura not chesed. That's regarding the para aduma. Now, the Rebbe clarifies his question. If we were focusing on the waters that were used for the para aduma that was mixed with the ashes, then the question would not be. Because water that flows from a high place to a low place represents kindness. Especially the waters that have to be used here for the para aduma, which has to be living waters from a wellspring. What is being highlighted here is the word ashes, and here the ashes of the para. This is the ashes of the body of the para itself, which represents the ultimate level of gvurais. So how does this connect to what Avram says? Since Avram's Aveda represented the ultimate level of chesed. So we can explain this as follows. Now it's known that there are two ways in how chesed expresses itself, or rather, two sources really of what chesed is coming from. One is chesed mitzad hagedula, a kindness and sharing that comes from a level of greatness. As you can see regarding a great king, or a minister, or someone that's very rich, as tzlib ze hergish hagadlos, that because of the level of expansion and greatness that they have and they're living with, so that's expressed by the fact that they will give and share in abundance. To give an abundance of goodness and kindness to all people, great or simple, whoever it may be, they share with an abundance. Being that they are the source of the goodness and the life or the wealth that they have, so that goodness spills over and is shared with everybody. It's from this level of chesed that it's possible that it would evolve in a negative sense, the concept of sharing and chesed that there is in the opposite side of klippah, which is chesed the Yishmael. Yishmael was the son of Avraham Avinu, but he twisted and utilized chesed in the negative. Was kommt bei Yishmael and mitzad gavus vegasos. By him, the giving is to make the point that I am the giver, and it's just an expression of his haughtiness and feeling greater than someone that's lower than him. To demonstrate his wealth and his greatness, and to make a name for himself and to take pride of his greatness. So in its source, it comes from Kedusha. Since in Kedusha, this is really the source of life and the source of wealth and the source of all good. And therefore, that source becomes the source of giving. But in Yishmael, it becomes a source of that I am it, I have it, and it's about me. This is all one kind of chesed. A zweite in chesed is, but then there's another category of kindness, chesed Avram. And this is the chesed that we find the way it's expressed by Avram Avinu. Der chesed is, was der chesed is, the concept of this kindness is adarabah. It's the opposite nature. Verbunden mit bittel v'shiflis davke. This is connected to and it's a result of humility. V'anoichi offer veifer, like Avram says that I am merely dust and ashes. V'tzadem was hat sich gehalten kleiner von allem, since he sees himself to be smaller and less than anybody else. Meisem atzme kishirayim, he sees himself as just a leftovers. The Rebbe hat mashpia gewen chesed zu allem. Therefore, he gives and shares with everybody else because I deserve to keep nothing for myself, and he just gives for everyone else. So this is the source of the giving comes from a completely different place. That doesn't come from a source which is full and wealthy, and therefore it gives, being a source of so much that shares. On the contrary, it's a source that feels like that I'm small, I have nothing that I should keep for myself. Someone else is more deserving than me, and therefore he shares. So sharing as a result of humility. The accomplishment and what's greater in this category of sharing is nit nor in them. It's not only in the following fact. someone that is very humble in his eyes, haltendig as alle andere sind chashuven mimenu, he considers everyone else to be greater than him, gibt weg den zweiten mikola shaloi, so then he's ready to share with anybody whatever it is that he has. On sich is mefarnis ma'asherayim va'moisres. For himself, he keeps what will be left over for himself. He looks at himself as secondary. First, he gives everything away to someone else. Mashenkin dervos and chesed kut mitzad gedula, which this level of sharing will not be by someone that's giving as a result of what he does have and because of his greatness that he is. Losta derike for sich. So the primary portion, the source, remains by him. On the zweiten get another shiraim, and then it spills over and he shares and gives what's left over for someone else. That's one point. But it goes even further. Nor nachmer, even more, wie der Alter Rebbe sagt in Likutei Torah, as a fila magia lo reisa, magmilas chesed, that even in a case where the giver may suffer in one way or another as a result of this that he's giving, is mezechnit meineya miligmal chesed. Nevertheless, as a result of his absolute humility and self-nullification and seeing as someone else deserving to have it more than himself, will be ready even to suffer in the case where he is sharing with someone else. Only megefintes by Avram. And this is the kind of kindness, and to this extent, as you see it expressed, how Avram Avinu did it. Was ein chesed is gewen kanal mitzadem, was hat sich gefühlt wie Ofer Wefer. His kindness was as a result of him saying that he's dust and ashes. As nit nur is gewen gereit zu stellen in Sakones and chaya guf, wichtet zu helfen at zweiten. So we find that not only was he ready to place his body in danger, his life in danger, to help someone else. Wie erzählt in Parshas Lech, as the Pasuk tells us in Parshas Lech Lechav, dort is der erste Sipum befurish von Avram's his askus and midas hachesed. This is the first story in Torah that it says explicitly about Avram and his kindness. Asilidem inyan from pidyon shvuyim, in order to release someone from captivity. In that case, it was late. Emes take as an chesed gufe is das a mitzvah Rabbi. Yes, this is a very great mitzvah. Pidyon shvuyim. Hat sich Avram gestellt in Sakane und geführt am Mohammed mit Malachim Gebeirim. Avram Avinu placed himself in danger, and he was ready to go and fight with very mighty kings. So we see how far his midah of sharing and kindness to help someone else goes, even to put his own life in danger. But that's only physically. Nachmer, it goes even further. As to leave them, because of his level of giving that comes from humility, he was ready to put aside his own spiritual state of being. And this we see in the beginning of this week's parsha. When there were the three men, the three angels that appeared as men, that came in front of Avram Avinu. Hat Avram Avinu gesagt zu dem Eibischen, lahamten loi, achiyados v'yachnes asarchem. So Avram Avinu turns to Hashem that came to visit him and says, you should wait, and he will run and bring in the guests. Das heißt, what we see here is, as sleep, hachnas asarchem, for the mitzvah of bringing in the guests, sharing his kindness, is bei Avram gewen recht zu überreißen dem Inyan von Kabbalas Pnei Ashchina. So for Avram Avinu, he says that it's the right thing now to interrupt his connection to standing in front of Hashem and go and bring in the guests. And the Gemara learned up davon, and it's from here that the Gemara learns out the concept as gedola hachnasas erchen yeser me'akbalas pnei shchina, that to bring in guests is even greater than receiving the Eibishter himself. So here we learn this from Avram Avinu's behavior, that he's ready to forgo on his own spiritual level that he was on, standing in front of the Shechina, for the mitzvah of Achnasas Eichem, for his chesed. This is the greatness, the extent of Avram Avinu's chesed. Now, as the Zadavra move on, it's understood as for Avram, for a person like Avram Avinu, was ein ganz Leben is given nit kin Chaim Besorien. His entire life is not a physical life, nor Chaim Ruchniam, spiritual life. Is there uplossen hakbalas bnei shchina? So the fact that he left standing in front of the shchina, aggressere mesiris nefesh, this is a much greater self-sacrifice, gresser be'ena reich, infinitely greater, wie das einstellen chaya guf shalai, than the fact that we find earlier that he was ready to put his physical life in danger. Noch mehr furthermore, zu lieb welch archim hat Avram ibegerissen der Matze von hakbalas bnei shchina. For what kind of guests does Avram Avinu stop his standing in front of Hashem to go and greet them? Für azelige, was hat gemeint, als seinen Arbiyim, shemistachvim la'avak ragleim. For such guests, as it's described in Rashi, that Avram Avinu thought that they're Arabs, and they're bowing down, they're serving Avodah Zarah, and to what? To dust, and dust of what? From their feet. Nitztam of the Avodah Zarah. So not only are they people that are serving idols, nor the nidirikste, oifen von Avodah Zarah, the lowest level of serving idols, as the Rebbe adds in the parentheses, noch nidiriker nor avak legabe ragleim. And Avodah Zarah that's even lower than their feet, and so low that even in relation to the feet is just dust. And they're bowing down to that. So the lowest of the lowest kind of people, Avram Avinu sees them, he's ready to leave his level of connection to the Shechina to serve them, to bring them in. So it comes out from this. As Avram hat sich abgerissen von die hechste Darges Beruchnies. Avram Avinu is ready to interrupt his highest levels spiritually. Wie sie is der Inyan von Akbalas Pnei Shechina, as it is in that situation when he's standing with Hashem. And here the Rebbe explains how high of a level this is. Varam oichen dis mannen by Avram is nit given the matzah von Akbalas Pnei Shechina. Even in any other time, when Avram is not standing in the front of Hashem, is a given on Merkaval Hashem. His entire life is dedicated, he's a chariot for Hashem, kol yemei chayav, every moment of his life. Wie der Alter Rebbe sagt, wegen der Avis, as the Alter Rebbe says this in Tanya regarding our ancestors. As kol yemeim lo olam lo yefsiku afilu shah achas von zu seiner Merkava. Their entire life, even for one moment, they did not interrupt of their full and complete dedication to Hashem like a chariot to its rider. But versteht man, so from this we understand how much greater this is here than Ilui. The great level of Ramazan, b'shas Vayera elov avaya. When Hashem appears to Avram Avinu, the is galus b'ri'iyeh to Avram. When Hashem appears and is seen standing in front of Avram Avinu. And Avram Avinu interrupts this for what purpose? Kedei tzuarei salfan azelache, in order to assist such individuals, v'zeir anhage is their heipich gomer von akbalas pnei shchina. Their behavior is the complete opposite of standing and receiving the Shechina, Avodah Zarah ba'ofen hachi tachten, serving idols on the lowest level. Von Varet is gekommen zu Avram in Azan Hage. How does Avram Avinu come to behave in such a manner? Das was Yidden noch Avram führen sich azay. The fact that Yidden today, after Avram Avinu behaved this way, this extent of self-sacrifice in sharing and kindness, is not kein Chiddush, is not a novelty. As is a hayram for in Torah, because a Yid follows the clear directive that the Torah tells us as Gedola Hachnasas Erchin Yesem Akbalas Pnei Shechina, that it's greater to bring in guests into your home than the highest level spiritually receiving the Shechina. Aber von Varet hat es Avram abgelernt. What was Avram Avinu's source that this is the right thing to do, to interrupt such a level of connection to Hashem for such people that are so low? The answer is Avram Avinu didn't need a source. He did it instinctively. Now, while Avram is kanal geven betachlis habitul, Avram Avinu was completely self-nullified. Didn't feel himself at all. Vanoichi offer ve'efer, I'm just dust and ashes. Is the Rebbe by him given upgelegt? So by him it was obvious. Instinctively, it was simple. As jederene, whoever it may be, wer soll sein, regardless of the level he's on, kommt frier farim, is a priority to be taken care of and to be helped before he tends to his own needs on whatever level it may be. This is afila the eigene ruchnius, including the highest spiritual levels that he could experience for himself, darf man weglegen on a Zeit, has to be put aside, in order to attend to someone else that needs assistance, even if it's just physically. This is the extent of Avram Avinu's level of chesed that comes as a result of absolute self-nullification, and therefore you have a level of chesed which is Mesiris Nefesh chesed. Und das ist die Scheiches von Amiras Avram, Vanoichi, Offer ve'efer, to the zwei mitzvahs von Efer Parava Offer Seite. Now we understand what is the connection of what Avram Avinu says when he expresses his humility, that he's merely like dust and ashes, connected to the two mitzvahs, the Para Aduma and the Seite. Weil der Kiyum von die zwei mitzvahs, because the fulfillment of these two mitzvahs is verbunden, dafke mit der Hergischer Chesed, wie das kommt von Vanoichi, Offer ve'efer, al derech wie es ist gewähnt bei Avramen. The way these two mitzvahs are fulfilled is connected to the level of self-nullification expressed in Avram Avinu's statement that I'm merely dust and ashes, and the way we see Avram Avinu shared with others. And that is to sich meise never sein beruchnius, zu lieb helfen at zweiten. To be ready to put aside your own spiritual levels to be that to assist someone else, was das weiß kanal of Mesiris Nefesh Amitis. This is ultimate and real self-sacrifice. Where do we see this by Paraduma and Offer Saita? The din by Paraduma is, so the halacha by the Paraduma is as follows. As kol ha'iskim b'para mitchila v'atzayif, all those that are occupied in preparing the red heifer to be ready to be used to purify someone, from the beginning until the end, ver and tame, they themselves become impure. That means, as fadet sich von dem Kayin, what's demanded of the Kayin that is preparing all of this, was in Yoni is kedusha v'tarav v'lasharis b'beis hamikdash. The place and the position of the Kayin is holiness and purity, and to always be ready to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. As zal yored zami madrigasai bis zu werden tamei, that he should come down from his level and become impure, und durch dem nit kenet ton die aveda in Beis Hamikdash, and that will then prevent him of doing the work that he has to in the Beis Hamikdash. For what reason? Bechdei zu können bringen tare for a zweiten Yid, to bring and prepare the paraduma, bringing purity for another Yid. Und for welche Yid darf es der Kain sich mit Tame sein? For what kind of Yid is he going down from his level to prepare purity for him? For a tmei meis, for someone that became impure from contact with a dead body, which is avi avos hatuma, the grandfather of all of impurity. But beruchnius meint us. Spiritually, what does this represent? Shas a Yid is davik zum Meibishtin. When a Yid is connected to Hashem, is nechayach the minyan amisav v'tumah. There's no death and there's no impurity. As the pasuk says, you cleave to Hashem your God, and you live today. Tumas meis, so the impurity that comes from a dead body, what this indicates is that this person has been disconnected from holiness. Biz, as it says, bedarge from tumas meis, to the point that he's on a level like someone that becomes this impure because of a lack of any life altogether. Und even for someone that's so low on this level, it's demanded by the Kayin as that he should not pay attention to his own spiritual level. He should prepare what's necessary and impurify himself. And with this, he could assist another Yid that's on a very low level to purify himself. This is exactly a fulfillment of the level of sharing that we find by Avraham Avinu. So therefore the Efer of the Paraduma is a reward for the Efer that Avraham Avinu says in the statement Vanochi Afer Efer, expressing his level of humility and the way he did chesed with a complete self-sacrifice. On Al Derech says Benegeya Afer Saita. Similar, we see this expressed regarding the dust or the earth that's used in the waters of the Saita. The Raivtu for Mei Saita is, what's unique here regarding these waters of the Saita is, as last is Chelek, ben Ishle Ishtoi, as the Gemara tells us, in order to bring peace between husband and wife, when there is this suspicion that the husband has about his wife that went with someone else privately, so in order to clarify this matter and make peace between them, Amra Taira, Shmi shenichtav b'kedusha yamach alamayim. So the Torah says, my holy name that's written in holiness should be erased in the parasha that's placed into the waters of the Saita that she will drink. Now, it says, there's no greater desecration of holiness than, God forbid, taking the very name of Hashem and erasing it with your hands physically. But in order to bring peace between husband and wife, is ben meichik dem shem. The name of Hashem is written and then taken with my hand and placed into the water and erased. Und da redt sich, for whom are we doing this? We're speaking about Vegana Isha, a woman, was hat sich geführt in a Neifem von Hepech Atznias Legamri. Her behavior was completely the opposite of being modest. Whether she had a relationship with this man or not, but she was secluded privately with someone else, with this person. And this is after her husband gives her a warning. She's not listening, and she was privately with someone else. That's the source of the suspicion here. But nevertheless the Torah says, that even for the peace with this kind of woman is kedai, that it's worthy, it's worthwhile, and it's a mitzvah to erase Hashem's holy name. So here we see the same concept that we're taking the greatest level of holiness of Hashem and erasing it, in other words, bringing it down to the ultimate degree from what it is for the purpose of bringing peace, helping a woman that's on such a low level. That's the connection to Avram Avinu saying Ofar about himself. Leuten over the mountain beer, according to this explanation, in the Shaykhs from Vanoichi Ofar ve'efet to Para Aduma, in the connection of Avram's statement that I'm dusting the ashes to what the Para Aduma is about, this gives an additional explanation to a story that's brought in the Zayar in Parshas Chukas regarding Para Aduma. In Zayar wird erzählt, the Zayar tells us, as Rab Pinchas ben Yair hat gebeten, bei Rab Shimon ben Yochai, sagen a Mila Chadeta in Parshas Zayar Chukas HaTorah. He asked Rab Shimon ben Yochai, which was his son-in-law, that he should say some novel idea regarding the parsha of Para Aduma, the parsha of Zayis Chukas HaTorah. Hat Rab Shimon ben Yochai gebeten, as Rabbi Elazar ben Noi soll sagen Milachad. So Rab Shimon ben Yochai didn't say anything himself, but he turned then to his son, Rabbi Elazar, and asked him to say a novel idea. And Rabbi Elazar getan. And Rabbi Elazar said a new idea in the parsha of Para Aduma. That's the story. Is the Tatam of Vayera in notice of Zoya, the Rebbe's father explains in his comments to the Zoya. The Tam was Rab Pinchas ben Yair at Gewalt am Milachad to Parshas Para Aduma Dafke. What is the detail here that Rab Pinchas ben Yair asks of Rab Shimon ben Yochai? I want you to say a novel idea specifically in this parsha of Para Aduma. As das is the far was Pchinas Rab Pinchas ben Yair who al derech Avram Avinu, because the level of Rab Pinchas ben Yair is similar to Avram Avinu. By Avram Avinu it says that he said about himself that he's dust and ashes. And because he says he's like ashes, so his descendants merited the mitzvah of the ashes of the para. So therefore, Rab Pinchas ben Yair, that was similar to Avram Avinu, asks for a novel idea regarding Para Aduma. But as in Flug nicht verstandig, however, seemingly it's still not understood in this. If Para Aduma is connected to the level of Rab Pinchas ben Yair himself, in Parshas Para Aduma. So then why didn't he himself share a novel idea regarding the Parsha of Para Aduma that expresses his level connected to Avram Avinu that are both related to this Parsha of Para Aduma? Al derech zan similar Rashbi, was Rab Pinchas ben Yair hat gebeten sagen die Milachadete. So regarding Rashbi as well, Rab Pinchas ben Yair asks him to say a novel idea. The far was in Yona shel Para Aduma hat shayches to beginnes Rashbi, because there's also a connection to the level of Para Aduma, or the Parsha of Para Aduma, to the level of Rab Shimon ben Yochai. Wie the Tate is dort mevair, as the Rebbe's father explains this point. Hat euch das nicht getan? He also did not actually say the novel idea. No gebeten sagen Rabbi Elazar ben Noi. He asks by his son Rabbi Elazar rather to say a new idea here. Why did they do this? Why did they pass it to someone else and not themselves express their level, that their connection that they have to the Parsha of Para Aduma? But Valpianal, based on what was explained before. As what is the connection of what Avram says about himself, that he's ashes, to the ashes of the Para Aduma? Is not only the words ashes, but it's mitzad der Anhage von Avram Avinu b'midas hachesed and anayfim from bittul. It's because the ashes represents the unique level of kindness by Avram Avinu that he shares with self-sacrifice out of his complete self-nullification. Is Yeshleimar, if so, we could see that expressed in this story as well. The Shaykh is bepashtus zwischen Rab Pinchas ben Yair mit Chesed Avram is, what's the simple connection, in addition to what the Rebbe's father explains, but the simple connection between Rab Pinchas ben Yair and the level of kindness of Avram Avinu is, was me gefind as Rab Pinchas ben Yair hat sich Oster gewen in Pidyon Shvoyim. We find in the Gemara that Rab Pinchas ben Yair occupied his time with helping people, releasing them from captivity. Was Kanal is thus the erste Sipper and Teire wegen Chesed Avram. As mentioned before, that is the first story of Avram Avinu's kindness. Was das ist a Chesed, was ist verbunden mit Einstellen sich in Sakane zu Livratven a Zweiten. And this is a level of Chesed, like it happened by Avram Avinu, that he put his own life in danger to save someone else. Und die Shayches von Rab Pinchas ben Yair zu Chesed Avram, it's this specific connection of Rab Pinchas ben Yair to the level of kindness of Avram Avinu to leave welchem is zeiche zu Efe Para, that as a result he didn't merit to the mitzvah of the ashes of Para. Hat Rab Pinchas ben Yair gewollt ausdrücken in them Inyan Gufe, so Rab Pinchas ben Yair wanted to express this kind of chesed in this inyan itself here. Oiftan amila chadate in Parshas Para Aduma, he wanted to express and bring out a novel idea in the Parsha of Para Aduma, but how? On in demselben Eifin, but in the same way expressing what the unique chesed of Avram Avinu is. So therefore he forgoes on his own spiritual level to have the merit to reveal this new novel idea in Torah in this Parsha of Para Aduma. This is a schus nifla, which is a tremendous and great, incredible merit. And he forgoes on this. Kedei to mizakizai Rab Shimon ben Yochai mit dem schus. In order to give somebody else, Rab Shimon ben Yochai, this merit. Mesiris nevesh beruchnius van het zweiten Yid. So this is giving up your own spiritual level for the sake of another Yid. So this connection itself, that Pinchas ben Yair is connected to Avram Avinu in the inyan of Para Aduma, is expressed by this, that he passes it on to give the opportunity for his son-in-law Rab Shimon ben Yochai to reveal this novel idea in this parasha of Para Aduma. The same Rab Shimon ben Yochai himself, so he forgoes on his own merit in order that, as Rabbi Lazar ben Noi, that his son Rabbi Lazar should have this merit to reveal the parsha, or the point, the chiddush in the parsha of Para Aduma. As the Tata is Mevayer, take note of another point that the Rebbe's father explains, as das was Rabbi Lazar had gesagt, the milachadeta, that the fact that Rabbi Lazar was the one that did say the new idea is al derech k'moisha para rishayna nasis be'Elazar HaKohen. That it's similar to the fact that by the very first red heifer, who's the one that prepared it, it wasn't Aaron HaKohen himself, but it was the second, the son, Elazar HaKohen. And in the footnote, the Rebbe said that there it's the same idea, that the Kohen Gadol himself gives up his merit for this, and only the second, the Sgan Kohen, is the one that prepares the Para Aduma. Based on all of this, we could also understand why the reward for what Avram Avinu did, and when he said "Vanochi offer ve'efer," that I'm dust and ashes, is verbunden mit efer paradavka, nit mit mechatash bezeh. In the Para Aduma, there are two parts. There's the ashes of the burnt Para Aduma, and there's the water. But it's all connected specifically to the ashes and not to the water. So it's not just because the word ashes here and the word ashes here, but there's something about the content of this part of the ashes that's uniquely related to this subject here. This kind of level of kindness found by Avram Avinu was that he's ready to give up even from his own spiritual level to help someone else. Is verbunden damit is also connected to this was that we see that Avram Avinu, for the sake of his sharing and kindness, he even uses out an opposite attribute, the attribute of gvura, which is usually withholding and harshness. He uses even that out itself for the sake of his kindness. Now, as it's known, the explanation of what Avram Avinu says in the Pasuk Ki Yidaitiv, where Hashem says about Avram, Ki Yidaitiv l'manashi yitzav v'goyim elas tzedakah u'mishpat, that I know him, that he commands his children and he does tzedakah u'mishpat. This is actually earlier in this week's parsha. Okay, not that that's by that case. There's a different pasuk. Anyways, it says over here Ki Yidaitiv, and then it says that too. Avram Avinu says, Hashem says about Avram Avinu that he does two things: tzedakah, which is sharing and kindness, but then it also says mishpat, judgment, which is gvura, harshness. As it's tzedakah von Avramin is given verbunden mit mishpat, because Avram Avinu's tzedakah is connected with judgment as well. In what sense? Avram Avinu judges himself, judging or evaluating what it is that he needs for himself. And he was very, very critical about this. And he scrutinized, do I really need this? He's only going to leave for himself bare necessities. Und das ganze Bereke hat weggegeben tzedakah. And everything else he distributed for tzedakah. So what do we see in this kind of behavior? So this point here, as midas gvura is misayeya and minyan chesed, that Avram Avinu is utilizing a nature of gvura, of being harsh and critical and scrutinizing, utilizing it for the benefit of the chesed, to be critical on himself and to only keep the bare minimum for himself, so that will enhance his sharing with others. So utilizing Gvura in this way to assist the Chesed is verbunden mit dem Tchonen von Bittul v'anochi afa v'efer. This will only be when someone is giving with his Chesed, but the Chesed is coming from a place of self-nullification. Like Avram said it, anochi afa v'efer. Because b'shas the Chesed kommt mitzad Bittul only when the kindness comes as a result of a person's level of Bittul, humility. Then what is a Chesed nit bagranit to ein tel from mention. So then his kindness won't be limited to just one aspect of the person. Chesed and the tzir from midas a chesed. That the chesed is just a natural thing of giving, and therefore it's just this. It's just this specific attribute of giving. No, es nem turech alle teilen von der Menschen. Rather, it's something that runs much deeper in the person. The person puts himself aside completely, so therefore the chesed overtakes the person entirely. To the point that it transforms, it nullifies and transforms even his attribute of gvura, harshness, to be utilized and included in this giving. Naturally, gvura doesn't join together with chesed. It's the opposite. However, if it's coming from a place of complete bittul, where the person puts aside his nature completely, so then chesed is not limited to chesed. It envelops and includes and elevates the entire person, all for the purpose of his sharing to this extent. Das ist der Tam. So now we understand that this is the reason. Why? Specifically, what aspect of Paraduma and what aspect of the Saita are we focusing on? The ashes and the dust. Because the main accomplishment here in the humility of Avram expressed in these words, it's not expressed just in the fact that it could be the natural concept of sharing and giving, which is the mechatos, the waters which are naturally chesed. This mayim is chesed kanal. Not in them, was man macht ibe de gvura chesed. The point there is that this is a unique level of kindness coming from Bittul that transforms everything. It transforms even the gvura, opposite in nature, to assist and even further, to a greater extent, the chesed. Das ist der Inyan von Sreifas Bitla Para, and this is the ashes. This is the point of the taking the para and burning it to ashes. And that is the hamtokas gvuris, utilizing gvuris and sweetening it to be utilized for chesed. Und davon wird der Efe para. And this is the ashes of the para. That's a much greater expression, a much greater extent of the chesed that's even sweetening and utilizing gvura for this purpose as well. Look at the Torah, as the Alter Rebbe says, and look at the Torah about this, as this is the Inyan von Efer, that this is also the word itself of ashes in Hebrew, Aleph, Fei, Reish, as anstatt para, par, hey, that instead of it being the cow, which is spelled with the Pei, Reish, and the hey at the end, was weist of the hey Gvuras kanal sif Aleph. The hey refers to 5 aspects of Gvura, Vert Efer. The same 2 letters of the par, but then it's joined by an Aleph, Aleph par. Was the Aleph, Hainu HaGvuras K'maishu B'Sharshai. Aleph being the first of the Aleph bays means that we're taking this par and elevating it to its source, Hamtakas HaGvuras B'Sharshan. Elevating Gvuras from their place, the way it comes out, that it's harshness or it's judgmental, but going back to its source, where in its source it's sweet and it assists the level of sharing that it was by Avram Avinu. As regarding the ashes, by the Paraduma. Al derech similar is that Eivtuf and Offer Saita is also the dust or earth that was used in the waters of the Saita, but says is Mahapech the Mayim Amarim. It takes these bitter waters and it transforms it as the Mayim Amarim, which is Gvuris. Naturally, these waters here is waters that represent Gvuris because it's bitter. So Eivton the Pu'ula Shal Chesed. Now through the offer in this water, what it accomplishes is that we utilize the gvura itself to then assist the act of kindness, as it happens in the case as a result by the woman once it's clarified that she's pure and she didn't do an aveda, that the niksa, the nizra zera, and she's clean and she will have children.